Notice the two graphs here, average household income. Now, they're measured in 2009 dollars, so that means over time, 2000, 2001, up to 2009, it's adjusted for inflation. Now, if you take inflation into account, which this graph does, average household income in 1999 was worth 52,400-ish. In 2009, we trace back here, somewhere between 49,500 and 50,000, so maybe 49,750. Notice the scale on this graph. So here the scale goes from 48,000 up to 53,000. So we're just zooming in on the data that we want. Now, if we start the graph at 0 for average household income and take a look at it, the line looks relatively flat, that there's not a lot of change in average household income over time from 1999 to 2000. So the scale that you use to look at the numbers is going to dramatically affect what people see when they look at it. And so we're just going to take a look at how to make these two charts. So I'm going to use Google Sheets. There's two ways you can proceed from here. You can estimate the values on this chart, or I have here my estimates of those. I'll share this link with the video. So right now it's a review-only chart, so I want to make a copy for myself. Give it a good name. Put it somewhere I'll remember. All right, so here are my estimates of these numbers here, and I want to make a chart of them. So I'm going to zoom out a little. See some of the tools at the top. So recommended way to make a chart is to highlight all the data that you need. And in Google Sheets, and it's similar in Excel, you can insert a chart. In Excel, it's recommended charts. So the computer puts in a line chart, and the scales are a little bit different than we have. Notice here it starts at 49,500, goes up to 52,500. Slightly different than the chart on the previous one, so we can get that out of here. We can adjust that. So I'm glad it made a line chart. Again, if it doesn't make the kind of chart you want, then you can select other kinds of charts. There's all kinds of options here. So I'm all right with what was selected. X-axis is my year, and it's saying year there because I highlighted that year cell, and average household income is there also. So Sheets automatically put in a title for the chart and axes titles, and you definitely want axes titles so people know what they're looking at. I also have a legend here. I don't really need a legend because there's only one set of data. And multiple lines, multiple sets of data, because you'll have multiple colors, and you'll have to distinguish between the colors. So as far as the data tab here, I'm pretty good on what it automatically chose for me. I'm going to jump over to customize. So here under legend, I can say, well, I don't really need a legend. So let's do none, because there's only one color. There's a little more room. If you wanted to adjust the wording in any of the titles, the chart title, the horizontal axis title, or the vertical axis title, then you can choose to mess with any one of those and adjust them. Series relates to the data, and so here I can do things like put a point on each spot, which I think I will choose to do here. Okay. And I can control the type of line, the color of the line. Now we don't want to do a trend line here, so we're just going to leave that other stuff off. the horizontal axis, I have a little bit of control over how those numbers appear there. I can say what I want the minimum and maximum value to be. Sometimes we need to treat the labels as text. If we do that, it will put every single label down at the bottom. So now it looks more like that other one. Other options are, again, to control the minimum and maximum value. And then if those labels are slanted to fit. And the scale factor is how often to put marks. And so I could go, let's see, we're going every year here. So I could go every, oh, I see, it multiplies by that factor. Yeah, we don't want to do that. All right, that wasn't what I thought, excuse me. All right, so I think I'm going to choose to put labels as text so it shows all of those values for me. Turn that off. Let's go to vertical axis. Vertical axis, I control the min and max. So if I want it to look like that graph I started with, that one went from 48,000 up through 53,000, I could tell the computer to do so. So here I could type 48,000, I could type 50,000. No, it was 53,000. Now it's more like that one I had before. Scroll over here. Is there anything else we want to adjust? That's good. Grid lines. So right now it's just putting grid lines on the vertical axis. I can adjust when those grid lines occur with these settings here. And I could decide, it's not going to let me, oh, I see why. On horizontal axis, we set it to treat as text. So if I turn that off and then go to grid lines, then I can play with the horizontal axis here too. So here it's automatically putting them in. So I can change that and mess around with how many we put in there. Let's see, ooh, interesting. Sometimes these automatic things don't do exactly what you want. That's strange. It's going extra years because it wants to count by 2. It's not letting me change that. So what if I change that to, oh boy, now. Alright, let's go back to auto, and it's counting by 2s. I set that, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I set that to 5, 2. How about 1? There we go. So now I have a line vertically for each year. Although it only labels every other year. I have to figure that one out later. Again, Google updates things all the time, so these menus are slightly different every month or so. So that's a slightly new feature than I remember a few months ago. All right, so I think I like my graph, so I'm going to scoot it over here and make another one. Again, making a chart, highlight the data. Insert chart. So I'm going to do a little bit different this time. This one I'm going to start at 0 so I can see, zoom out on this a little bit. So I'm going to go to customize to do that. And then I'm going to go to vertical axis. And under vertical axis, I'm going to set the minimum to 0. And so now I can see my data here. And what else do I want to do? I think for the series, I turn points on by giving it a point size. All right, so there's my data over time. So in this version, I can see when I zoom out, the data doesn't look like it changes that much. So we're going to analyze that change next. Let's turn off the legend. All right, so here's my other chart. Stick that one underneath here. So to analyze that, I'm going to take a look at the income change from 1999 to 2000. So I just want to focus on those two values. So I've copied them over to my second sheet here. So I just have the 1999 values and the 2000 values. So absolute change is the difference between these numbers. So review how to calculate that. It's equal to the new number minus the old number. And so here I can see there was a drop of $2,650 measured based on the value of the dollar in 2009. So again, that takes into account inflation over time. As each dollar is worth less as you move forward in time, or worth more as you look back in time. The percent change, let's calculate that, that's equal to the absolute change, which is the difference, divided by the original amount, which is what we're comparing to. And so I can see that $2,650 that the average household lost from 1999 to 2009, so over that 10-year span, that was a drop in 5%. So households in 2009 made about 5% less than what average households made in 1999. So that amount change seems significant when we look at chart 1 here. That drop in of $2,650. On the other hand, when we zoom out, that's more like the percent change. There's only a slight drop from here to here as I zoom out, and that slight drop is represented by the percent change. And so that's that drop by 5%. All right, so zoom in on those formulas again. This one was just the difference, the new value minus the old. Percent change, also known as relative change, is the absolute change divided by the original amount. So that's our base value. So what that tells me is that 2,650 is 5% of 52,400. All right, let's play with some other charts. So next we're going to take a look at pie charts. We'll start with some pre-made ones. So here, US population in 2010, so this is based on the census in 2010, 16% of the US population is designated Hispanic. So when people do the census, they get to check a box. Population checked the Hispanic box, and 84% of the population checked something else as far as ethnicity goes. As we collect data over time, we can make projections about what we think is going to happen in the future. So how is the population going to increase? And the projections, according to one model, and there's many ways to do this, one projection is that in 2050, Hispanic population will be 30% and non-Hispanic will be 70%. So the question is, because there's a drop in the percent of non-Hispanic population, does that mean there's going to be an actual drop in the number of non-Hispanic US citizens? Similarly, because there's a rise in the percent of Hispanic population, is that an actual rise in the number of Hispanics? Or is there some other change going on here? Now, we can't answer those questions unless we know some actual numbers. And so in the next part here, I have some actual numbers. So 2010, the US population was around 310 million. In 2050, it's predicted to be about 439 million. So we're going to use those two numbers and these percentages to try and answer the questions I was just asking. How are the actual numbers of non-Hispanics expected to change? How are the actual numbers of the Hispanic population expected to change? So let's take a look. So we're going to build a new spreadsheet. So give it a title down here for sheet 2. Hispanic population. And so some things I'm going to want in there are year, US population, percent Hispanic population, actual Hispanic population. We'll clean that up in a minute. Let's see, we have percent non-Hispanic. And then we'll have the actual non-Hispanic population. Cleaning those up, we can just highlight all of those cells. And in Sheets, we can then format it to wrap cells. Text wrap, there we go. All right, so that's a little nicer. And we can even make it prettier by throwing in, let's say, background color. Maybe make it bold. That's nice. In Excel, there's a button up here somewhere that will wrap your text for you. Years, we have our 2010 and 2050. In 2010, the US population was about 300 million. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And in 2050, it's predicted to be 439 million. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we should probably format that as a number. Get rid of those decimals. Okay. So next, Hispanic population in 2010, according to the census, was about 16%. So I can just type 16% there. And non-Hispanics then would be about 84%. Calculate the actual Hispanic population we just multiplied. Population total by the percent of the group I'm interested in. Since that formula there is going to be similar to this one, I just want to multiply these two numbers. I can just fill or copy that down. And again, we probably should adjust those so we can read them better. Putting commas in and dropping those decimals down. So we get an actual Hispanic population in 2010 of about 49,000, and then, ooh, what did I do wrong? Something's wrong with this picture. No, that's right. Yeah, okay. No. Oh, this 84% doesn't go there. 84% goes over here, percent non-Hispanic. Here we want to go equals actual population times percent non-Hispanic. There we go. In 2050, it's predicted to be 30%. So the Hispanic population is going to go from 16 to 30% expectedly, which would be 49 million up to 131 million. So it's going to more than double, right? See what happens with the non-Hispanics. If it's 30% for Hispanic, then it should be 70% for non-Hispanic. So 70%. And then we could either fill this formula down here, or we could calculate it. Equals actual population times percent. Clean those up so they're more readable. Format as number, and drop those decimals off. Okay. So although the percent of non-Hispanics drops, the actual amount of non-Hispanic population is still going to increase. So again, percent change and actual change can be different because it kind of depends on what the base populations are. And not knowing that is a problem sometimes. So just a percentage tells us something. The percentage and the original numbers tell us more. And so always consider that when you hear percentages on the news, because they don't tell a complete picture. They only tell part of the story. If I want to make charts with either of these, I could do it in a couple of different ways. I want to know the year. If I want to select things that aren't connected, actually I don't do what I want here. I want go this direction. Okay. Ooh, I got another cool trick to show you. Sometimes it's nice, instead of our data going in rows, we want it to go in columns. And so this is a neat trick that'll help with my graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that and bring up a new tab. I'm going to just duplicate this tab. I'm just going to call it copy of, and that's okay. So I'm in the new one. I'm then going to copy this, and underneath, I'm going to repaste it. Now, when you paste stuff in Excel or in Sheets, one cool option is to transpose it. Transpose means change rows to columns or columns to rows. So I'm going to hit paste transpose. And so now I get that same information, but I get the years coming down and the labels on the side. So just a different way to organize it. And then I'm going to get rid of these rows. So if I highlight the row number, that highlights the whole row. In Excel, there's a button over on the side to delete stuff. In Sheets, we go to Edit, and then we say Delete Rows. All right, so we have a slightly different way of looking at this right here. So I want to make a chart where I have, how about the years in the U.S. population? Let's start with that. Here I'm going to insert, zoom out, chart, and zoom out so I can see the options. There. I want to change to a pie chart. Yeah. And it's having trouble with my data, so we need to, column A should be labeled one. Let's see the data to figure out what I want to do. Row 1 should be headers maybe here. Oh. Let's see, what options do I want? Definitely want column O. We're going to switch the rows and columns. There we go, that's what I wanted. Okay, so who knew that's not what I wanted either. Oh yeah, that is what I want. So now it's showing me the 2050 population versus the 2010 population. And as a pie chart, that makes no sense. Bummer. Because with a pie, you want the two numbers together to make a whole, and it doesn't make sense to add the population from 2010 to 2050. So Google Sheets actually gave me a better option. Its recommended was a column chart. So then I can compare the 2010 population to the 2050. Now, this is kind of a neat option because look at this. It looks like the 2010 population is so much smaller, but note where it starts. So again, a lot of people make charts, and you got to question charts people make. Sometimes the computer helps make the chart for them. So this chart is misleading because we're not starting at 0. So we can customize that by going over to the vertical axis option and saying, let's throw a minimum of 0 in there. Now we can see the actual population is this tall here in 2010. We jump from 310 million up to 439 million. But the starting at 0 just makes it look more real. So that's a good chart there. It didn't put any titles, so we probably should put in a title. Let's see. Oh, no, it's chart style. Chart titles, there we go. So we can say US population, 2010 versus 2050. That's better. And then we probably should put vertical axis one in there. So that would just be population. So for type. And then we're going to adjust the horizontal axis. Not the title, but we want to treat it as text. So then I'll just put labels under each column, which looks better. That's a nice chart. So we have two different ways of viewing it. We could view the table as rows of information, or we could view the table as columns of information. So let's take a look at it in columns this time. So here I'm going to highlight the year. And then to highlight things that aren't connected, we use Control. So I hold down Control, and then I click here and drag down. So then I can get the year versus the Hispanic population. So I can look at just the change in the Hispanic population. So then I could insert a chart here. And again, Google says, hey, I think a column chart would be an appropriate way to look at that data. And it doesn't always get it right. So again, that's just something to think about. We could get rid of the legend here. I'm just going to leave it for now and do another one. I could look at the Hispanic population just in 2010 versus the non-Hispanic population. So Control click to highlight those two. And I want the titles too to come in there. And then I can ask for a chart. And it's throwing in a column chart, which is fine, but I want to try pie chart this time. Because here I'm comparing two things that are part of a whole, and it's having trouble with it, so we'll see if we can adjust it. All right, so sometimes switching rows and columns helps. Sometimes telling it to use a particular column or row as a header can help. So here, notice I gave it the actual numbers, the 49,600,000 and the 260,400,000. And the spreadsheet automatically calculates that that means the Hispanic population is 16% and the non-Hispanic population is 84%, which is kind of nice. And it adds these pop-up menus that tell us more about it there. It would be nice to add a title to this. So US population 2010, Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. You have to give it a title that is appropriate to your audience. Suppose I'm going to show this to my family just to tell them what's going on now, or some friends, or maybe this is for some meeting I'm going to go to. Okay, let's try. All right. So that's it for now. I just wanted to play around with using tables of data to make charts, and there's lots of different charts we can make. And then choosing appropriate options for charts and appropriate types of charts. And so it's not always appropriate to make a pie chart. Bar charts work for a lot of data, almost everything really. And then other things we want to be aware of are choosing a scale for data. You get different pictures depending on the scale that you choose. So it's like, what's your point? Why are you making this graph? What do you want to show people? Do you want to show people that there was a dollar decrease in what people earned from 1999 to 2009? Or do you want to show that there was a moderate decrease by 5%? They both tell a different story. They're only misleading if you don't tell the whole story. All right, that's it for now. Have fun, do good math.